بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلله فلا هادي له ونشهد أن سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمدا عبده ورسوله وصلى الله تبارك وتعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وبارك وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. When we look through the Holy Quran, in particular the stories and the legacies of the previous prophets like Sayyiduna Musa alayhi salam, Sayyiduna Shu'aib alayhi salam, Sayyiduna Lut alayhi salam, Sayyiduna Salih alayhi salam, we find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Almighty, has mentioned their stories and their legacies over various places in the Holy Quran. And we also find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has only mentioned the main facts, the main points relevant to the topic or the subject in hand. So in other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you take an example of the story of Musa alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned it over various places. And also when we look at the story of Sayyiduna Musa alayhi salam, we find that the beginning of the story is mentioned in one part of the Holy Quran. We find that the middle of his story is found in another place in the Holy Quran, and the ending part of his story is found in another place in the Holy Quran. But the beauty of the story of Sayyiduna Yusuf alayhi salam is that the story of Sayyiduna Yusuf alayhi salam from the beginning all the way until the end is found in one place in the Holy Quran. So from the beginning all the way until the intiha, all the way until the end, it is found in one place in the Holy Quran. It is under chapter Surah 12, under Para 12, under the name of Surah Yusuf. So in that particular surah, in that particular chapter, you will find the entire story of Sayyiduna Yusuf alayhi salam from the beginning all the way until the end. Now this story is known as Ahsanul Qasas, the best of all stories. And why is it an amazing story? Why is the story of Yusuf alayhi salam fascinating? It is fascinating because this story talks about or centers around two human characteristics. One is what we call the praiseworthy characteristics, such as bravery, such as loyalty, such as affection. And this story also at the same time centers around the human vile characteristics, such as hatred, such as malice, such as jealousy, such as lust, and such as desires. So it's a mixture of good human traits, about bravery, about loyalty, about patience, and it also talks about lust, desires. It also talks about hatred, malice, and jealousy. So because it is a mixture of the two, that's why it is a fascinating story, and that is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has described this story as Ahsanul Qasas, the best of all stories. Now before I look at the story in a bit more detail, let me set the scene in terms of Sayyiduna Yusuf alayhi salam. Where was he from? Who was his father? And who in particular, who was his siblings? Now Sayyiduna Yusuf alayhi salam lived in a place called Canaan, which is in Palestine. And his father, as all of you know, was Sayyiduna Yaqub alayhi salam. Now Yaqub alayhi salam married a woman whose name was Layya. And with Layya, Yaqub alayhi salam had 10 sons. He had 10 sons with Layya. Thereafterwards, his first wife Layya passed away, and Yaqub alayhi salam married her sister, Layya's sister, whose name was Rahil. And through Rahil, Sayyiduna Yaqub alayhi salam had 2 sons, Yusuf alayhi salam, and the other one was Binyamin. So basically, Yusuf alayhi salam and Binyamin, they are blood brothers, real brothers, whereas the other 10 brothers, they were his half brothers, they were his step brothers, and that kind of explains why they didn't like Yusuf alayhi salam as well. So basically, the 10 brothers who we're going to talk about in this particular story, they were Yusuf alayhi salam's step brothers, half brothers, and Binyamin, who he had affection for, who he loved, who he liked. Binyamin was his real brother. Now the beginning of the story, Yusuf alayhi salam was 7 years old. And a young 7-year-old boy, he has this kind of confusing dream. He has a very strange dream. And in his dream he sees, إِنِّي رَأَيْتُ أَحَدَ عَشَرَ كَوْكَبًا وَالشَّمْسَ وَالْقَمَرَ رَأَيْتُهُمْ لِي سَاجِدِينَ. Which means that I saw in my dream 11 stars, and the sun and the moon, they were prostrating in front of me. So Yusuf alayhi salam, 7 years old, and he sees this strange dream of the stars, the sun and the moon prostrating in front of him. Now before I continue, there's one point I forgot to mention, is how did this story come about? In other words, how was this story revealed to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam? How or what were the circumstances, what was the cause for this story to be revealed in the Holy Quran? Now it's mentioned in the books of tafsir that some Jews, they came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and as all of you know that many of them had some doubts about Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whether in fact he is the final prophet and the final messenger of Allah. They didn't deny the concept of a final prophet, they believed in that, but they thought or they believed that the final prophet will be from the Banu Israel, i.e. will be a Jew himself. So they had some reservations and doubts that whether Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was the true prophet and a true messenger of Allah. Now what happens when you meet someone who claims to be something? What do? You try to test him out. It's like, say for example, if someone is claiming to be an imam or a scholar or a mufti, so what you do is that you try to test him out, you try to ask him a question, try to trip him up. You know, you look at his answers, does he give the answer correctly? And if he does, then you think, okay, this person is reliable, this person is credible. But if it's someone who's claiming to be an imam or a scholar, and you ask him a question and he's unable to give a good answer, or he's unable to give an answer at all, then you doubt whether he is an alim, whether he's a scholar, whether he's a mufti. So exactly the Jews, they thought to themselves that, okay, let's ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam a particular question where he will be unable to answer. Because many of the Jews, they thought, and this is mentioned in the Holy Quran as well, they thought, because Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was ummi, he was unlettered, he didn't know how to read and write, but they thought that there were some people around Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam who knew how to read and write. They would look into the Torah and the Bible, and they will kind of narrate stories to Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about Ibrahim, about Ishaq, about Yaqub, and Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam then would say to the people, and then he would make himself look as that he's a prophet and that these stories have come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they had that doubt. So they wanted to ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam about a story or an incident which is not mentioned in the Torah and which is not mentioned in the Bible. And the story, the only story which is not mentioned in the Torah and in the Bible is the story here of Sayyiduna Yusuf alayhi salam. The story of Yusuf is not mentioned anyway. It's not mentioned in the Torah. It's not mentioned in the Bible. So they thought that, okay, let's ask Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam this question. See whether he will be able to answer it or not. So they came to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They asked, O Prophet of Allah, Messenger of Allah, can you tell us the story of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam? Then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam waited for wahi, for divine revelation, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed the entire surah, the entire story in detail. Now, as I was saying, going back to the beginning of the story which I started, Yusuf alayhi salam, he's 7 years old. He sees a dream that the stars, the moon and the sun are prostrating in front of him. So he went to his father Yaqub alayhi salam and he asked his father that, "O father, what is the interpretation of this dream?" So his father Yaqub alayhi salam replied by saying that this is a very, very good dream. What you saw is a very blessed dream. And it is a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that one day you will be made a prophet and a messenger. And number two, it is a sign that one day you will have authority. You will have rulership. You will be a ruler, you will be a king. So basically, Yaqub alayhi salam told him, you will one day become a ruler. And number two, this dream is glad tidings that one day you will become a prophet and a messenger. Now after Yaqub alayhi salam related this dream, and this is a very important point, he then went on and he told his son Yusuf alayhi salam, La taqsus ru'yaka ala ikhwatik. Do not narrate, do not tell this dream to anyone. In particular, your ikhwatik, your brothers. Don't say this dream to anyone. Why? فَيَكِيدُ لَكَ كَيْدًا, because they will harbor enmity and hatred against you. In other words, Yaqub alayhi salam knew that the other siblings didn't like Yusuf alayhi salam. But if Yusuf alayhi salam went to the brothers and told them that, boys or bros, I'm going to become a prophet and I'm going to become a ruler, that will tip them over the edge. They'll go really mad, they'll go really, really angry. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Yaqub alayhi salam, he says to Yusuf that don't narrate this dream, otherwise فَيَكِيدُ لَكَ كَيْدًا, the brothers, the siblings will harbor enmity against you. And from this the ulamas, the scholars, they derive a very beautiful point. And the point they derive is that even nowadays as well, just say if you've achieved something, or just say for example you got a promotion at work, or just say you graduated, you became an alim, or you became a hafiz, or you become a lawyer or a solicitor, you graduated or you've achieved something. What we can understand from here is that you should not tell people of your achievements, in particular to those individuals who you think may harbor enmity against you. Just say there's someone who you know that he doesn't really like me, so there's no need for you to go to that person and say that I've got a promotion at work, or I've graduated, or I'm a lawyer now, I'm a doctor. Why? Because if he doesn't like you, when he hears that you've got a promotion at work, when he hears that you've become a lawyer or you've become a doctor, it's going to make him mad. And what's he going to do is that he's going to try, or he'll make plans, or he'll plot against you. فَيَكِيدُ لَكَ كَيْدًا. He will make plots and plans against you. So from this, what we can understand is that even in life as well, if we've achieved something, there's nothing wrong with telling people that you become a lawyer, doctor and so on, but say to those who are well-wishers. But those who are against you, those who you think that, they may look religious on the outside, but inside, they got some plans or they got something sinister, then for those people, don't tell them of your achievements. Why? Because فَيَكِيدُ لَكَ كَيْدًا, they may harm you, they may do something against you. So similarly, Yaqub alayhi salam told Yusuf that you've seen the dream, it's a very good dream, but don't tell anyone. Now from here, I just want to mention a few things about dreams, not in any detail, but just a few points about dreams and the reality of dreams and also the significance of dreams. Now it is mentioned in a hadith which can be found in Sahih al-Bukhari that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam described that dreams are of three types. So there are three types of dreams. The first type of dreams are those what we call imaginations. And they, generally speaking, come about because of something what you did during the day. So just say, for example, if you are a businessman and throughout the day you're always thinking about money or stocks or clothes, or if you work in the grocery department, apples, pears, whatever, it's always in your mind. So then what happens in the night, you then see a vision of them. You'll see apples, you'll see bananas or pears, you'll see, like if you work in a clothes shop, then you'll see clothes. If you say, for example, thinking of getting married or you're in love with someone, you'll see her in your dreams. So basically whatever you are involved in throughout the day, you then see a vision of that in the night. So if somebody, alhamdulillah or mashallah, it sees mashallah is in kitabs and books and hadith and learning and so on, then inshallah he'll see images of these kind of things in the night. So that is one type of dream. The second type of dream, as Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam mentioned, is takhweefun min ash-shaytan, which means a frightening dream from shaitan. And they are dreams where a person sees in his dream that one of his loved ones, for example, his wife or his children or his father or mother, something's bad happening to them. Either they're getting killed, they're getting murdered, or something like that, or that he sees in his dream that his house is being burnt or someone's breaking into his house. Those kind of dreams. Now those dreams are takhweef min ash-shaytan. In other words, there are no interpretations to those dreams, and basically it's a dream where shaitan is trying to scare that person. Shaitan is trying to scare that person. So again, there's no interpretation of dreams where you see like somebody getting killed, a loved one getting killed, or you're getting killed, or something bad happening to you. This is generally speaking from shaitan, and he does that to scare you. And the third type of dreams, as mentioned in the hadith, are known as bushra bin Allah, i.e. glad tidings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they are the good dreams. Like we may see Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam in our dream, or something happened in our dream which has got a nice meaning. So they are known as bushra min Allah, i.e. glad tidings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now I just want to mention some etiquettes when it comes to dreams. It is mentioned in a hadith of Sahih al-Bukhari, also of Sunan al-Tirmidhi as well, that when somebody sees a dream, in particular a bad dream, he should, if possible, wake up and pray 2 rakat salah, nafil salah, and then ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection against the accursed shaitan. Now if that is not possible, then as mentioned in another hadith of Sahih Muslim, what he should do is that he should spit 3 times to the left and then change his direction of sleep and then go to sleep in the other direction. And also, before he goes to sleep, he should also seek refuge again from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala against the accursed shaitan. So that is what a person should do when he sees a scary dream or a frightening dream. And also, more importantly, but not necessary, is that if you see a frightening dream, you should not relate that dream to anyone. Just keep it to yourself. As I said, it's not necessary. You can relate it, and I'll come back to it later, but it's best not to. And as I said, that it's not necessary because there is actually a hadith which can be found in Sahih al-Bukhari that during the battle of Uhud, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw a dream, and in his dream he saw that the sword he was carrying broke into 2 pieces. So then Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam told the Sahabas of this dream, and then he interpreted that this dream is a sign that we, i.e. the Muslims, are going to lose the battle of Uhud, and also it is a sign that Hazrat Hamza radiallahu anhu, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam's beloved uncle, would become a martyr, would become a shaheed in this battle. So what we can derive is that you can relate, because that's a bad dream, isn't it? Like Muslims being defeated, Hazrat Hamza radiallahu anhu losing his life. So you can narrate it, you can relate it to others, but it's best not to. Now another point to remember when it comes to dreams is that when it comes to dreams, you should only narrate the dream, if it's a good one, to those people who are well-wishers, or to those people who happen to be an expert in the field. Because if you go to someone who's not expert in dream interpretation, and he gives you an interpretation which is wrong or which is incorrect, then what will happen is that that wrong interpreted dream will then come into effect. That wrong interpreted dream will come into effect. And there may be some of you thinking that, well, if it's wrong, then how can it come into effect? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only makes things happen. So if it's a wrongly interpreted dream, how can that dream come into effect? Now there are two ways it comes into effect. I'll just very briefly explain it. It is mentioned in a hadith that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said that dreams, they are unattached. They're like pending. Like there's nothing attached to dreams. So think of dreams to be like bubbles in the air. You're just like floating around. And then what happens is that when somebody interprets the dream, whether it's right or wrong, it doesn't matter. When it's interpreted, then that dream then gets attached with that interpretation. That dream gets attached with that interpretation. So if it's a wrongly interpreted dream, that thing will come into effect. And if it's a correct interpreted dream, then that dream will also come into effect as well. Also, another reason why sometimes wrongly interpreted dream can come into effect is that it is mentioned in a hadith Qudsi to be more precise, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, Ana inda zonni abdi bi, which means that whatever my servant thinks of me, that's how I will treat him. Whatever my servant thinks of me, I will treat him in that particular way. So what does that mean? It means that if we think Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be Al-Ghafur, the all-forgiving, At-Tawwab, and if we were to raise our hands and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness, and when we raise our hands we know that only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can forgive sins, and we pray with that intention, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will forgive our sins. Now, it's contrary at the same time, if you think bad of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like if you think, no, Allah's going to do something to me, Allah's going to hurt me, Allah's going to do something bad to me, Allah's going to take my children away, and if you think like that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will do that. And that's what happens when the dream has been wrongly interpreted. What happens is that, just say you saw a dream and you've gone to someone and he's giving you an interpretation that Abdul Rahman, you know what, I think you're going to die soon. I think you're going to die within 2 weeks. So then that person, yeah, he's got this in his mind that, oh, I'm going to die soon, Allah's going to give me death, Allah's going to give me death. So as the hadith Qudsi says, Ana inda dhanni abdi bi, that however that servant thinks of me, I'll treat him accordingly. So if that person thinks that I'm going to die soon, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell angel of death, go to that person and take his soul away. So that's why it's very important that when it comes to dreams, you go to experts, like we do when it comes to knowledge, like we do when it comes to studying medicine or studying law. We go to the best people to study medicine, we go to the best people to study law. Similarly, when it comes to dream interpretation, don't go to anyone on the internet or just do a Google search for your interpretation. Go to the best people, go to the experts, go to the ulamas, and inshallah they'll give you a good interpretation of the dream which you saw. Now moving along, so as I was explaining that Sayyidina Yusuf Alayhis Salam, he saw a dream, he got it interpreted, and his father told him not to tell the brothers. Now the next part of the story then goes on to explain in the Holy Quran about the brothers, i.e. Yusuf alayhi salam's 10 brothers, half brothers, and he begins that they are talking amongst themselves, and they asking themselves that why is it that our father, Yaqub alayhi salam, loves Yusuf alayhi salam more than us? Like why? What's the wisdom behind it? Why does our father love Yusuf more than us? And then the Quran explains, وَنَحْنُ عُصْبَةٌ, we are big, we are strong. So naturally, fathers, parents love their elder sons, the stronger sons who they can depend on, not younger sons. So similarly, the brothers were asking themselves that why is it that our father doesn't look at us, doesn't show any affection or love to us, and he shows all his love and affection to Yusuf alayhi salam and to a lesser extent Binyamin, and he totally ignores us, because when you look at it, we are more stronger and physically we can help him more. He should be more dependent upon us. So that was the feeling Yaqub alayhi salam's sons had regarding their father. So that was that feeling which was always inheriting them, this kind of jealousy against Yusuf alayhi salam, that why does our father like him more than us? So there was that feeling which was always there, slowly brewing day by day. But what tipped him over the edge, even though it's not mentioned in the Quran, but it's mentioned in the books of tafsir, that when Yusuf alayhi salam, because remember he's a 7-year-old child, he's a 7-year-old kid, even though his father told him don't, because that's how kids are. If you tell them don't do this, they do it. That's how kids are. That if you tell them don't mess around in the mosque, they'll mess around. If you tell them don't talk in the mosque, they'll talk. So that's how kids are. So obviously Yaqub alayhi salam told his son Yusuf, who's 7 years old, you need to remember that not to narrate this dream is a nabaligh, is immature, he's 7 years old. So obviously he then went and told his brothers that, look, I saw this dream, and Yaqub alayhi salam, our father, has said that, look, I'm going to become a prophet, and I'm going to become a ruler, I'm going to have authority, I'm going to have power. So you can imagine the brothers, when they heard that totally made them really angry, made them really mad. They were angry as it is, they had so much hatred for Yusuf alayhi salam. But what tipped them over the edge was when they heard this dream, that Yusuf alayhi salam now, from a worldly perspective, because he's now going to become a ruler and a king, and also from a spiritual perspective, i.e. nubuwwat and prophethood, he's going to become better than us. So they couldn't take that. Like when you have jealousy for someone, you want that person to be at arm's length, in terms of like, you think you're a bit more better than him, but because he's kind of competing with you, so you're a bit jealous of your position. But then when you realize that this person now is going to become better than you, spiritually and in a worldly way, that's it, you then lose it, and you become so angry, and you become hatred, and the malice, everything intensifies. So that's what exactly happened here, that when Yusuf alayhi salam told the brothers that, look, I'm going to become a prophet, and also I'm going to have kingdom, and I have rulership and authority and so on and so forth, the brothers got really angry. So they got together and they thought to themselves, okay, what shall we do now? This is going out of hand. We hate him, and now on top of that, he's going to be a prophet, he's going to have kingdom, he's going to even rule over us. So they got together, and some of the brothers, they were giving some mashwara. They were saying, uqtulu Yusufa, let's kill Yusuf alayhi salam, let's kill him, or awitrahuhu ardan, or cast him away in a faraway land. Now let's take him somewhere really far, and we just leave him there, and then we just quickly come back home, and we just leave him there, leave him to the wolves, leave him to the vicious animals outside. So that was the two mashwara, or the two advice given by the brothers. Either let's kill Yusuf, or number two, let's cast him away in a faraway land. The next part of the verse then goes on to explain, one of the brothers then said, La taqtulu Yusufa, do not kill Yusuf alayhi salam. Now who was that person who said don't kill Yusuf? Now it's mentioned in the books of tafsir that this person who said it was the eldest brother. And then there are two opinions about his name. One opinion says that his name was Yehuda, and in the Bible they pronounce it as Judah. And the second opinion about his name was that his name was Rubel, and in the Bible they pronounce it as Reuben. So two opinions about his name. Yehuda, one opinion, and the second opinion, his name was Rubel, and in the Bible Yehuda is pronounced as Judah and Reuben. So basically two opinions about his name. Now this brother here, the eldest brother, we're going to look at him later on as well. He actually had some feelings for Yusuf alayhi salam. He was like, you could say, the sensible one. But the problem was that he was overpowered by the other brothers. So even though he was the eldest and he didn't really want to be part of this plan, but because the other brothers were kind of forcing him, they were saying, no, you need to come, otherwise we're going to kill you as well. So he obviously got involved. So obviously he turned around and he said that, look, let's not kill Yusuf alayhi salam, because that was one of the advice, one of the mashwara, kill Yusuf. So he said that, look, let's not kill Yusuf alayhi salam. Best idea will be that let's throw him into a well, and then some travelers will then pick him up and they'll take him somewhere really, really far. So in that way he's out of our life, like he's gone from us, he's gone from Yaqub alayhi salam, he's gone from our eyesight. But also at the same time, we are not guilty of committing murder. Because obviously killing an innocent soul, and in particular a child of 7 years old, is not something correct, something right in all societies, something which is considered indecent and something which is considered to be gross. So they said that, look, let's throw him somewhere in the well, some travelers will pick him up, he'll go out of our lives, and we'll continue with our lives, and at the same time we don't have this guilty conscience that we were involved in a murder. So the brothers thought, okay, that's actually a good mashwara, a good advice. So now they said, okay, this is what we're going to do. Now the next part, this was a difficult part, was now they needed to get consent or go to Sayyidina Yaqub alayhi salam and convince him to let Yusuf alayhi salam to go with the brothers. That was a difficult part. Because again, it's not mentioned here, but it's mentioned in the books of tafsir that Yaqub alayhi salam did not allow Yusuf alayhi salam to go anywhere. If he went anywhere, he was with Yaqub. He never let Yusuf alayhi salam go anywhere without him. So this was going to be the most trickiest part, trying to convince Yaqub alayhi salam to let Yusuf alayhi salam to go with them. Now the brothers, they approached Yaqub alayhi salam. Obviously they told Yaqub alayhi salam that, look, we want to take Yusuf alayhi salam outside. He never goes out. He's at home all the time. He's like locked in a room and he's like imprisoned and so on. We want to give him a bit of freedom. So they said that we'll take him outside, we'll play, we'll jump, we'll do whatever, and we'll have a good day out, and then afterwards in the evening we'll return back home. So they put it in that way. Now Yaqub alayhi salam then replied, and this is mentioned in the Holy Quran. He then said to the brothers that, look, I fear that some wolves ayyakulahu dhi'bu may eat him up. I fear that some wolves may attack him, may eat him, whilst you are ghafilun, i.e. whilst you are heedless, i.e. not 100% taking good care of him. Sometimes it happens that when you have children and so on, there may be that momentary second where you just take your eyes off them and something may happen. So similarly, I fear that there may be, even though you make the promise that you're going to look after him, but I fear there may be a momentary second where you turn your face or your eyes away from him and a wolf pounces on him and just eats him and kills him and harms him and finishes him off. So that was the fear Yaqub alayhi salam had. Now you may be thinking, why did he actually use the word wolf here? Why couldn't he say, well, I fear a tiger may come and eat him up, or I fear that a cheetah or a leopard may come and eat him? Why in particular a wolf? Now the reason why the wolf was mentioned here is because prior to the sons asking permission, Yaqub alayhi salam also saw a dream. And in this dream he saw 10 wolves surrounding Yusuf alayhi salam. 10 wolves surrounding Yusuf. And that one of the wolves out of the 10 was trying to protect Yusuf alayhi salam. Now sometimes it happens that even the pious people, they may not be accurate or they may not be sure about a particular dream interpretation. Obviously later on it transpired that the 10 wolves which Yaqub alayhi salam saw in the dream was the 10 sons, and the one wolf who was trying to save Yusuf, as we're going to look at later, was the eldest brother Yehuda. So Yaqub alayhi salam, he saw this dream, but he couldn't, like, sometimes it happens that you got the formula there in your brain, but you can't do the last thing. You can't, like, put it or knit it together and come up with the answer. So he saw this dream. He knew that, okay, something's going to happen to Yusuf, but the last problem, the 10 wolves, who is that referring to? He was a bit unsure about that. So that's why when the brothers asked for permission, he said that, look, I fear that some wolves may eat him, so that's why I don't want to send Yusuf alayhi salam with you. Now before I continue, from here we can actually derive another important point some scholars have mentioned, is that, as I was saying before, and I mentioned this point before, that Yaqub alayhi salam knew that the brothers did not like Yusuf alayhi salam. He knew that. It was very clear, it was very evident. Even when they came to ask for permission, he knew that, I could smell a rat here. There's something like sinister is going to happen. So now question arises, because later on, as you know, that Yaqub alayhi salam did give permission for Yusuf to go with the brothers. So that question arises that when he knew that they were going to do something, when he could smell the rat, why then did Yaqub alayhi salam allow Yusuf alayhi salam to go with the brothers? Now the scholars have mentioned the reason why, or the wisdom behind that, is because of cooperation. In other words, as I was saying, that Yaqub alayhi salam knew that the brothers did not like Yusuf. Now if Yaqub alayhi salam has said to the brothers that, no, I'm not going to allow you, you can't take him, it would have made them even more angrier. So he thought that, okay, I knew they have a hatred and so on, but I'm willing to give one more chance. You never know that they may be actually true and genuine. And you never know that, sometimes they say like a team bonding exercise. It could have been like, they'll go for this trip and they may see a softer part of Yusuf alayhi salam, and they may even get to like Yusuf alayhi salam. So that was the wisdom used by Yaqub alayhi salam. And from this we can understand a very subtle point the scholars have mentioned, that sometimes we meet brothers and they say, oh, I like to be straightforward and so on. Sometimes it's not actually good to be straightforward. Yaqub alayhi salam knew what the brothers had, he kind of knew there was something fishy going on here, but he was willing to give them a chance. He was willing to actually basically give them one more chance to see whether they can rectify the relationship with Yusuf alayhi salam. So from this we can understand that sometimes people say, I like to be straightforward and so on, and blunt. It's not actually good to be blunt all the time. If you know someone is like, say, a bit just say you know someone or you're dealing with someone who cannot be trusted, or you heard something that he's not a trustworthy person, then you should not always blurt it out, oh, I can't trust you, that's why I'm not giving you this, or I'm not giving you that. Sometimes just use a bit of wisdom and hikmah. So here Yaqub alayhi salam, he knew there was something up, there was something wrong, but he just wanted to give the brothers, his elder sons, one more chance. So he said, okay, do you know what, I'll allow Yusuf alayhi salam to go with you. Now the story then continues that the following day Yusuf alayhi salam goes with the brothers, and when Yaqub alayhi salam was within their sight, the brothers were kind of playing with Yusuf. They were kind of like picking him up, they were kind of like holding his hands, they were kind of like joking around. And as soon as they lost sight of Yaqub alayhi salam, that's when all the torturing started. That's when they started chucking Yusuf alayhi salam. They started kicking Yusuf alayhi salam. They started abusing him, mocking him, ridiculing him, in particular about the dream which he saw. They started saying to Yusuf that, oh Yusuf, where's your stars? Where's the sun? Where's the moon? You said that, these things were prostrating in front of you. You were saying that these things are under your control. So where are the stars now to help you? Where's the sun? Where's the moon to help you? So they were mocking Yusuf alayhi salam. They were kind of, as I said, hitting him, pushing him. They were doing all sorts to him until they approached the well. Now when they approached the well, they took off Yusuf alayhi salam's shirt. They tied his arm. So they basically used the shirt as a rope. So they tied his arm with the shirt, and then they lowered him into the well. And when Yusuf alayhi salam reached halfway in the well, they then cut the shirt, and then Yusuf alayhi salam then went plummeting down to the bottom of the well. And it's mentioned that if it wasn't for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's mercy and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan, Yusuf alayhi salam would have died there and then, because it was a big deep well, and obviously a young child, a 7-year-old child, falling from midway from a deep well all the way to the bottom where there are rocks and stones. If he was any other child, that would have been the end of him. That would have easily smashed his skull into hundreds and thousands of pieces. But it was because of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Yusuf alayhi salam was saved. So when he fell to the bottom, he felt, but he didn't feel anything. So he was able to then obviously pick himself up, and there was a small stone there, a small rock there, and he then went and sat on that particular rock. It is mentioned in the books of tafsir that Yusuf alayhi salam had a tube around his neck. You could use the word taweez if you want. So he had a taweez or a tube around his neck. And in this tube, there was a qamis, there was a shirt, which Yaqub alayhi salam, his father, gave to Yusuf alayhi salam to wear to ward away evil eye, bad nazar. And we'll touch on the topic of evil eyes coming up later on in the story. So it's mentioned that when Yusuf alayhi salam, because remember he was thrown into the well naked, so when he was thrown into the well, Jibreel alayhi salam came, he removed the tube, he took out the qamis, the shirt, and then he made Yusuf alayhi salam wear that. And this shirt, by the way, is not an ordinary shirt from Primark or something like that, but this shirt is a shirt which was given to Sayyiduna Ibrahim alayhi salam when he was thrown into the fire. When Ibrahim alayhi salam was thrown into the fire by Namrud, he was thrown into the fire naked. So Jibreel alayhi salam came, gave Ibrahim alayhi salam this shirt to wear. Then it got passed from generation to generation to Yaqub alayhi salam, and then to Yusuf alayhi salam. So Yusuf alayhi salam wore this shirt to keep himself warm from the cold of that particular well. Now after Yusuf alayhi salam was thrown into the well, the brothers now got together and they thought about, okay, what do we do next? So one of the brothers gave the mashwara that, okay, let's sacrifice an animal and smear the blood of the animal over the remaining part of Yusuf alayhi salam's shirt. Because remember, when he was lowered into the well, they cut the top part. So the top part of the shirt, they thought, okay, let's smear it with blood, and then we could take it to our father Yaqub alayhi salam and say that, look, what you said about the wolf eating Yusuf alayhi salam, it came out to be true, and this is the blood. So this is what they did. They sacrificed animal, the blood, they smeared it over the shirt, and in the evening they went to their father Yaqub alayhi salam, and they used the fear Yaqub alayhi salam had about the wolves. They tried to use that as an excuse, because remember, Yaqub alayhi salam, he saw a dream, and remember, dreams of prophets, they happen. It's true. It's going to eventually one day will occur and will happen. So they knew about this dream of Yaqub alayhi salam, 10 wolves. So they said, oh, because he is a prophet and his dreams are true, let's play on that. Let's use that as an excuse and say, actually, yeah, there were 10 wolves and they somehow, got hold of Yusuf alayhi salam and they ate him. So they used that excuse to Yaqub alayhi salam, and then they showed Yaqub alayhi salam the shirt which was smeared with blood. Now Yaqub alayhi salam, when he heard this story, so first part of the story, fair enough, you'll be able to believe it, that okay, the wolf ate him, understandable, he's a 7-year-old child, he's not able to fend the wolf up by himself. So it is possible and feasible that yes, Yusuf alayhi salam, a young child, being eaten by a wolf. But when he heard the second, or when he was shown the evidence, so he heard the story, but then when he heard the evidence, or when he was shown the evidence, it didn't match. Why? Why didn't it match? It didn't match because a wolf, if it was to eat a human being, it would have torn the shirt, it would have torn and tear the qamis. So Yaqub alayhi salam was looking at the shirt, no tear, no rip, nothing at all, just blood. And then they're saying that a wolf had eaten Yusuf alayhi salam. And even though it's not mentioned there, but it's mentioned in the books of tafsir, that Yaqub alayhi salam, when he saw it, he said that, well, this wolf must have been really wise and clever, must have had a degree or something to work it out, like how to take somebody's shirt off, or must have communicated with that person, okay, can you please take off your shirt? So he took off his shirt and then went and ate the boy and so on. So obviously Yaqub alayhi salam knew that there was some, obviously, the story which they're giving is not correct, is not the right one. So this was the hope Yaqub alayhi salam kind of clinged on for over 40 years. Over 40 years. Like this kind of hope that, yes, Yusuf alayhi salam is alive. Because that was the thing he needed. Because if that was torn, if the shirt was torn, then that's it. That would have been enough for Yaqub alayhi salam to admit to himself that, okay, Yusuf is dead. But because it didn't match what they said, so Yaqub alayhi salam clinged onto that hope that actually Yusuf alayhi salam is alive. And obviously we'll touch on that over the latter part of today's talk and next week, of this hope Yaqub alayhi salam had of Yusuf alayhi salam being alive, and that one day Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make the two meet each other. Now going back to the next part of the story, so the brothers, they told Yaqub alayhi salam of what happened. Yaqub alayhi salam knew that there was actually something sinister involved here, but he didn't have anything to prove otherwise. Now Yusuf alayhi salam remained in the well for 3 days. And during the 3 days, Yehuda, the eldest son, would come to the well and would pass some food to Yusuf alayhi salam. Now one day Yehuda, he came to the well on the 3rd day. He called out Yusuf's name. Yusuf, are you there? There was no reply. So he went inside the well himself, checked, and Yusuf wasn't there. So he started panicking, goes, what's happened here? Yusuf's not there. Has he escaped somehow? Has he gone back home and told Yaqub alayhi salam, our father, of what we did to him? So the eldest brother Yehuda quickly rushed back home. He told the brothers, look, Yusuf's not there in the well. He may come anytime and tell our father what we did. So the brothers, they quickly rushed to the well. They were looking for Yusuf alayhi salam. He wasn't there. But nearby the well, they found a caravan, a group of travelers, a group of people. Now what exactly happened was, prior to them, or prior to Yehuda searching for Yusuf alayhi salam or sending food to Yusuf alayhi salam, one of the travelers was passing by this well. He lowered his bucket and the rope into the well to collect some water. Now Yusuf alayhi salam thought that actually the bucket coming down is from my elder brother Yehuda. He's giving us food. He was giving me food for 3 days, so he's probably had some shafqat, some kind of love and affection. They probably done tawbah, what they did, and now they want to save me. So when Yusuf alayhi salam saw the bucket coming down, he thought that it's actually help from them. So he jumped into the bucket. The traveler then raised the bucket, and when he raised the bucket, he then saw a a beautiful young child, in the form of Yusuf alayhi salam. So he then took the child to his people, to the other travelers who were there in the caravan. So when the brothers were looking for Yusuf alayhi salam and they couldn't find him, and they saw a caravan nearby, they thought, okay, let's go and ask them, have they seen a young boy? Now when they went there, they saw Yusuf alayhi salam. But what they said to the people of the caravan is that this boy, he is a slave. He is a abik, or in other words, he runs away from his master. Not just once, many times. He's one of those slaves who just runs away from his master. So we basically had enough of him. What we want you to do is that if you want, we will sell this slave to you. So basically, وَشَرَوْهُ, or he goes on to say, وَأَسَرُّهُ بِضَاعَ, they made Yusuf alayhi salam into a merchandise. I.e. they made him into a property, a commodity. So basically they were saying to Yusuf, or they were saying to the caravan people that, look, this boy here is always running away from us, we're sick and tired of him. Basically, if you want here, we'll do a deal and you could actually buy him. So what happened was that the caravan, they were thinking, wow, this is like a young boy. Because remember, in those days you were allowed to sell human beings. So they thought that, look, this is a young boy, a very handsome, good-looking boy. We could make so much money out of him. And the brothers, they sold Yusuf alayhi salam in exchange for very, very little amount of money. Bithamanin boxing is mentioned, very little amount of money. And in that way, they managed to get Yusuf alayhi salam out of their lives. They at least knew that, okay, he's alive and he's not dead, we haven't killed him, but because he's been sold and he's going to be taken away somewhere really far, in that way he's in a way out of our life, and we then could have the love and affection of Yaqub alayhi salam exclusively for us. Now the story then goes on that Yusuf alayhi salam is then taken to Misr, to Egypt. And in Egypt he's sold, or he's being sold in the local market, in the local bazaar. A lot of people, when they saw this young boy, this handsome boy, they were offering so much money. But obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed and decreed that at that particular time, the finance minister of Egypt would also by chance happen to be passing by the bazaar. Because generally speaking, those who are like high ministers, they don't go to the bazaar themselves to shop. It's against their honor and dignity to go to the bazaar or to the supermarket themselves and shop. They obviously tell their slaves and the slave girls and other people to do the shopping for them. But obviously it was Allah's will, it was taqdeer, it was written in fate that this finance minister, who never ever visits the bazaar and the market, by chance happened to be passing by the market. And when he saw this young, beautiful boy, handsome boy, he thought that, I want to buy this particular boy, and he could do some khidmah, he could do something for us. So what happened was, the actual reason was why he wanted it was for that, and also he and his wife, we're going to look at later, Zulaykha, they didn't have a child. Okay, it wasn't because of Zulaykha's fault, it was more because of the finance minister's fault. In other words, that he wasn't able to have children. So obviously when he saw a young boy, a beautiful, handsome boy, obviously you could imagine that he was overtaken, the sweetness of the boy overtook his heart. So he then decided to buy Yusuf alayhi salam, and he then took Yusuf alayhi salam to his house, to his palace, and he then told his wife, and his wife's name was Zulaykha, to look after Yusuf alayhi salam. Now the story then continues that Yusuf alayhi salam spent his teenage years in the palace of the finance minister and Zulaykha until he reached his mid-30s, 33 as mentioned in one opinion. So you can imagine a 33-year-old, someone who's very handsome, very good looking, very attractive. So Zulaykha unfortunately was tempted by the beauty of Yusuf alayhi salam, because obviously Yusuf alayhi salam was someone very beautiful, so she was attracted to him. So basically Zulaykha made a pass, or thought that, okay, I can't contain myself anymore. I want to fulfill my desires with this person, Yusuf alayhi salam. So the story continues that one day what happened was when her husband, the finance minister, wasn't there, Zulaykha came into the room, locked the door. So she bolted the door, no way out. And then she invited Yusuf alayhi salam to commit zina with her, to commit adultery with her. Now when obviously Yusuf alayhi salam heard what she said and what she was inviting to, he then ran away from Zulaykha. So Zulaykha then chased Yusuf alayhi salam, and then from behind she ripped and teared Yusuf alayhi salam's qamis. Now Yusuf alayhi salam ran to the door. Remember, the door was bolted, but when he ran to the door, miraculously the door opened. So the bolt was removed. It removed, and the door opened. And when the door was flung open, they then saw, the both of them saw, the husband of Zulaykha, the finance minister, waiting there. Now we'll come back to that later. What was his reaction? What did he do? And so on and so forth. But one point which we can derive from here, that some of you may be thinking that the door was locked. Why was Yusuf alayhi salam running to that door? Look, if you know that this door is totally locked, bolted, you probably think, okay, let's try breaking this window or something like that. Let's try to, escape through that way, or let's open the fire exit here. You'll think of some other ways of leaving that room. Why on earth was Yusuf alayhi salam running to the door when he knew that it was locked and bolted? Why didn't he just say no? Why didn't he just went to the corner somewhere and just protected himself? Why did he run to the door? Now from this, the ulamas, the scholars derive that when you are in a position or when you are in a place of sin, just say you went somewhere and you didn't know. I'll give you an example of a walima. Just say you thought that it's going to be Islamic, no music, no intermingling and so on. So you went there and then you see that there's full blast music here. There's intermingling, there's table dancing going on here. So you thought to yourself, okay, what's happening here? So now what you have to do is that you have to use your power, or use or exert or try your best, what is within your capacity, to leave that. What is within your capacity, you need to stay away from that. Exactly here with Yusuf alayhi salam, he knew that the door was locked, but what was in his capacity was that I have to run to the door. That's the only way out. Even though he knew that it was locked, but what he could do, what was available to him at that time, was to run to the door. And because of that little effort he made of running to the door, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then opened the door for him. So what we can understand is that, and this is sometimes people, they make complaints that, find it difficult to stay away from sins. You need to make an effort. You need to make the effort. That's what it is. Brothers, they want to stay away from sins, but they don't make effort in staying away from sins. They say, I'm doing this haram thing, I'm doing this unlawful thing. But when you speak to them and you ask them that, have you made an effort staying away? They say no. So you need to make an effort. When you make an effort, then the doors will open, and that's when you will stay away from the sin. If you're not going to make an effort, then obviously you're going to still continue doing the sin. So here, the effort Yusuf alayhi salam had to make was to run to the door, and then let the rest in Allah's hand. Allah will then sort the rest out. And this is what happened. He ran to the door, and then miraculously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened the door for Yusuf alayhi salam. Now, as I was explaining, that when the door opened, they got, obviously Zulaykha in particular, got a nasty surprise that her husband was waiting there. Now you could imagine, obviously, the husband, the finance minister, was in a bit of a bother here. He was a bit of a dilemma. Because obviously it's not nice, and obviously may Allah save us that we ever encounter such a situation that we go home and we find our wives in a uncompromising situation. So this is what happened here, that the finance minister, he opens the door, well, the door was open, and then he sees Zulaykha obviously chasing Yusuf alayhi salam, and obviously with a piece of his shirt. So what happened was, before Yusuf alayhi salam could defend himself, Zulaykha started the conversation, and she said, what should be the punishment for that person who intends to commit zina with the wife of his master, i.e. the finance minister, except that he is sent to prison or azabun alim, or he is given a humiliating punishment. So basically what happened was that Zulaykha started the conversation off, and she was accusing Yusuf alayhi salam that no, it was he who was trying to incite me and tempt me, not the other way around. And she will obviously led the conversation and said that, in my opinion, I think there's only two punishment deserving. That is, you imprison him, or number two is that you punish him. Now what happened was that when Yusuf alayhi salam heard that, he was like taken aback, like, no, it was her who did this. So he then defended himself. He said that no, it was warawadathu allati huwa fi bayt. Warawadathu allati, in other words, that it was rawadatni an nafsi, sorry, that it was she who was trying to incite me. It was her who was trying to tempt me to commit zina. And from this we can understand another point, which is that if you are wrongly being accused of something, you should try to defend yourself. There's no tawazu there. Tawazu and humbleness and humility is done in other places. But when you are being accused of something which you didn't do, like zina or thieving or breaking or hitting or whatever, and you know that this is actually totally untrue and totally false and a total lie, then you should defend yourself. So exactly here, Yusuf alayhi salam, he was being accused of adultery. He was thinking, what adultery? It was, her was trying to incite and trying to tempt me, not the other way around. So he said that no, it wasn't me, it was her. Now, put yourself into the finance minister's shoes for a moment. So he's got this dilemma. He comes home, he sees a very uncompromising situation, and then he's got two sides of the story. His wife is saying, no, it was him who was trying to tempt me, and Yusuf alayhi salam saying, no, it was her who was trying to tempt. So now the king or the finance minister is in a bit of a pickle here. What does he do? Now, this is the beauty, or this is the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That, as all of you know, Allah protects his servants. Yep. He protects his pious servants. And the beauty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ways is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, now listen carefully, uses babies to speak in their infancy to protect a pious servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanallah. Uses babies to speak in their infancy to protect these servants, the pious servants of Allah. Take an example of Sayyidah Maryam radiallahu anha. So what was she being accused of? Zina, wasn't she? So what happened? Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam then spoke and said, Inni Abdullah atani al-kitab wa ja'alani nabiyya, to exonerate the claim made by the Jews against Sayyidah Maryam radiallahu anha. There's another story some of you may have heard. It's in Sahih Muslim, also in Imam Nawawi's Riyaz al-Salihin, about Jurayj. There's a person called Jurayj, you may have heard of this story. He was a very, very pious person. He was in his monastery 24/7. He would just worship Allah, he would just worship God. Now what happened was that one day his mother called him, said, Jurayj, come here. But Jurayj was in namaz. So he was thinking to himself, shall I listen to my mum? Shall I listen to my mother? Or shall I listen, or shall I continue with my prayers and salah? So Jurayj went for the second option, and he said that no, I'm going to continue with salah and I'm not going to listen to my mother. So obviously his mother got angry, and then she made a curse against Jurayj. And the curse she made was that Jurayj, may Allah not take Jurayj's life until he sees the face of a prostitute. May Allah not take his life or his soul until he sees a face of a prostitute. Now what happened was, nearby there was a prostitute, She committed zina with a shepherd and she fell pregnant. She gave birth to a child. Then this prostitute started going around and telling everyone that Juraj, the pious person, he committed zina with me, he committed adultery with me, and that's his son. He's the father of my child. So you could imagine that everyone in the area were like taken aback. He does ibadat, he does namaz and so on, and he does is tarah ki harakat karta hai, in the evening or in the weekend and so on. They got really mad. So he goes, look, he's trying to be pious and so on, and then he does these dodgy things on the side. So what happened was that the king at that time told his army, his soldiers, to knock down the monastery. In the monastery where he was worshipping in, told him, knock this down. It's not ibadat khana, it's like a shaitan khana here. So, that's not ibadat, that's not a place of worship. It's like he's doing zina in these places. So told him to knock the entire the monastery down. So then they took Juraj in front of the king, and the king said to him, is this your son? So are you the father of this child? So Juraj then saw, because remember what did his mother, what was that curse his mother made? That you will see a face of a prostitute. So obviously he had to look at the woman, the prostitute. So he looked at her face, then he went to the child and he said to the child, "O child, who is your father?" So the child, who was sucking its thumb, took his thumb out and said, "My father is so and so shepherd." So that's what I was explaining, that those who are pious people, Allah uses who? Babies to speak in their infancy to do the exoneration. So exactly here with Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam, he was being accused of adultery. So what happened was that in that room there was a baby, and it's mentioned that this baby was Zulaykha's cousin brother, Ibnu Ammiha. So obviously she was Zulaykha's cousin brother. So this baby was there in the cradle. It then spoke out. It then spoke. And he said to the finance minister, now listen carefully, the baby didn't say, "Oh, finance minister, Yusuf alayhi salam is telling the truth, your wife is lying." Because as you know, the finance minister can't then go around to the court and say, "Oh, it's Zulaykha's guilty, Yusuf's innocent, and the evidence, oh, this baby said it." Like beat him up and say, "What are you wasting our time for?" So what exactly happened was that the baby, he didn't just say Yusuf's innocent, Zulaykha's guilty. He actually said words of wisdom. In other words, he gave a rule or a usul or a principle so that the Aziz and Misr, the finance minister, decides for himself who's guilty and who's innocent. So what did the baby say? The baby said, if Yusuf alayhi salam's qamis is torn from the back, then Yusuf is truthful, she is lying. And if Yusuf alayhi salam's qamis is torn from the front, then she is telling the truth and Yusuf alayhi salam is lying. Subhanallah. So it wasn't like basic yes no answer the baby gave. The baby actually gave a particular rule, a principle, so that the Aziz and Misr, the finance minister, could work it out for himself who's true and who's guilty and who's innocent. So obviously the ayat then goes on to say that when they saw, or when he saw Yusuf alayhi salam's shirt being ripped and torn from the back, then he realized that actually Yusuf alayhi salam was telling the truth and Zulaykha was lying. Now after obviously this incident happened, Yusuf alayhi salam's, afterwards the finance minister said to Yusuf and also Zulaykha, you know what, just keep this incident hush hush, just keep it amongst ourselves. I know something happened, but let's not let everyone know about this particular incident and secret. But unfortunately, as you know, what happens in life, that rumors or bad things, they always tend to spread quickly rather than good things. It takes time for it to spread or people to know, but bad things tends to spread very, very quickly. So what unfortunately happened was that in that area, people started talking about this incident. Somehow they found out, people started talking that, look, the wife of the finance minister, because you need to understand the caste system as well, they are like proper high class people, and Yusuf alayhi salam, who's like a servant, a slave, he was considered to be more kind of a low class. So people were talking, especially the women, they were saying that, oh, look at the finance minister's wife trying to tempt and seduce her slave and her servant. This kind of rumor and this whisper was kind of spreading, and everybody was talking about it. Now what then happened was that Zulaykha, the wife, wanted to basically tell the women, or wanted to show the women that, look, basically you can't blame me here because for tempting Yusuf alayhi salam, because Yusuf alayhi salam is not like any ordinary human being when he came to beauty and when he came to like virtues and when he came to his attractiveness. He's not like any ordinary human being. So to test the women, what Zulaykha did was that she invited them to come to her house. So they all came. And in those days, obviously, nowadays what happens is that if any guests come, we actually, like if you say for argument's sake, want to give them an apple, so we cut it for them and we just leave it on the plate and then they take it. But in those days what would happen is that you will get the apple and you'll also leave the knife there as well. So they kind of cut it themselves and then they eat it. So Zulaykha gave them the food, gave them a plate of fruits, and there was a knife there. So basically they were like cutting the apples or whatever they were cutting, and they were eating it, they were cutting it, and then they were eating it. Thereafter, Zulaykha told Yusuf alayhi salam that, can you just like walk in front of these women? Just don't say anything, just like walk in front of them. So Yusuf alayhi salam then walked in front of them. Now when Yusuf alayhi salam was walking in front of them, they were like so taken aback by his beauty that they were cutting the apples. They finished cutting the apples, then they started cutting their fingers, and they didn't realize. That's how awestruck they were on the beauty of Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam. But it's mentioned in hadith of Shamali Tirmidhi that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was even more beautiful than that. Subhanallah. But obviously they were taken aback by Yusuf alayhi salam beauty. They cut their fingers, and then he says in the Quran that, subhanallah, he's not a human being. Illa malakun kareem, he's a noble angel. He's not a human being, he's not an ordinary person. Look how beautiful and attractive and handsome he is. He's not a human being, he's an angel. So then they kind of, asked for forgiveness from Zulaykha and said, look, forgive us, we understand what you went through. If we were in the same situation, we would have done the same as well. So then they realized that, look, Zulaykha isn't at fault here. It was basically, she was so awestruck and overtaken by the beauty of Yusuf alayhi salam. Then the next part explains that Zulaykha then said, in front, Yusuf alayhi salam was there, and also the other women were there as well. So Yusuf alayhi salam said that if Yusuf alayhi salam doesn't listen to me or doesn't do what I tell him to do, then I'm going to send him to prison. Basically, obviously, as you can imagine, she got a bit like embarrassed about the situation. So now she wanted to like get her own back. Like it happens sometimes in life, like just say you get rejected by a girl, then you want to like, take a revenge, or you like have hatred for her. So exactly as well that she was rejected by Yusuf alayhi salam, so now she wanted to take revenge. So she was saying to Yusuf that if he doesn't, do what I tell him to do, if he doesn't behave the way I tell him, then I'm going to send him to prison. So then Yusuf alayhi salam thought that, okay, if that's how you're going to treat me, I might as well just go to prison now. So he then said to Zulaykha and to the finance minister that, like, look, it's best that if I go to prison to save yourself and everyone from talking about this particular incident. So then what happened was that Sayyidina Yusuf alayhi salam then went to prison, and he remained there for a number of years. Obviously that leads to the next part of the story, inshallah, which we'll look at in next week's lesson, about the two people seeing the dream, and then Yusuf alayhi salam being released from prison, and then becoming the finance minister, the treasurer of Egypt, and then the meeting of his brothers after a number of years. So inshallah we will touch on that in next week's lesson. May Allah give us the tawfiq to act on what has been said.